Hello everyone! Christmas just passed, and to no one's surprise, part of the gifts I received this year were yarn. So, Mom gave me some yarn this year, and this was part of the yarn, but these particular skeins were given with a condition. She told me that she was giving me these skeins so I could make her a vest. She's literally the only person in the world who can get away with that, so don't be getting any ideas. But, she ended up choosing some really good yarn, because while this isn't my typical color family, I mean, it's very rich. I don't know if you can see, like, the inside. I don't know if the camera shows it very well. It might show it better on, like, the darker brown than the lighter brown, but it's almost like the yarn is highlighted, you know? Like, it's multiple browns in there mixed together. It's kind of like looking at highlighted hair. And then it's very soft yarn, too. It's like, it's the yarn that you squeeze. It's like, it's so soft. It's so soft. But it's not itchy because it's acrylic. Well, there can be itchy acrylic, but this acrylic is not itchy. And it's also smooth yarn, so you don't have to worry about, like, different bumps along the way. Anyway, I think I figured out what pattern I'm going to use for this yarn, which, I mean, honestly, it probably means I'm going to have to go back to the craft store and buy more of one of the colors of yarn, because it's not like, it doesn't split the colors evenly. But considering it's for my mom, like, this color scheme is right up her alley, and I think I found a pattern that is up her alley too. It's called the Towels Vest. Don't know if you can see it there. It says it's a convertible sweater, but I think it's convertible more in how you wear it and not necessarily flip to the other side. But it's also a complicated pattern. It's like, which isn't really a deterrent for me because I need a challenge, but it is the type of pattern where it has like 6 different sizes, or 7 different sizes, all in the same thing, that has like different instructions, and it's all written out. And quite honestly, I need it to be a graph. That's how I'm going to keep track of it. So I have a system for how I plan out my knitting garments, and that's pretty much what this video is going to be. It's going to be me graphing out the sweater that I'm going to be making for my mom. And at the end of the video, I'll include the finished sweater, so that way you can actually like see how it turned out. But the majority of this video is just going to be like me drawing a graph. Anyway, I need to change the angle, so I'll be right back. Welcome again to my ceiling, everybody. So, when it comes to the instructions, the way that this vest is being made is it's being made in 3 parts. So the whole back is being made first, and then you got the 2 parts in the front, because the front is where the opening is for the vest. So, first thing is, you need to figure out what size it's going to work for. I know what size, like, looking at the finished measurements, which are in inches in this book, I measured my mom earlier today, so I know I'm headed for a large here, according to the book. Provided I end up following gauge. We'll see if we end up following gauge later or not. And then it tells me to work the pattern straight for, in her case, 8.5 inches. When I do the back, the one thing that I do when it says, like, it just gives me a set of inches and just work for straight inches, I will keep track of the amount of rows it takes to reach that amount of time. So that way when I do the front and I have to, like, do the repeat, I can do the same amount of stitches and they'll match up when I sew them together. Because a lot of the patterns in this book, they aren't necessarily continuous. they, or like a lot of patterns that I've done, they'll have it like in parts and not have to sew them together. So when you sew them together, you want to make sure like one part's not longer than the other. Then it comes to shaping the waist. So it says decrease 1 stitch at the end of the next row, and every following, in her case, for this sweater, it's going to be 6 row, 6 times. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw a graph that will explain to me what I'm doing just by a glance. Because, let's be fair, I'm probably going to be doing this while watching TV. And when I'm watching TV, I'm often reading subtitles. So, and I'm going to be involved in the plot of whatever show it is. So I'm not going to, if I like look at the writing, I'm going to get lost. So we just start with the decrease 1 stitch. Every following 6th row 6 more times. So 6 by 6 square would be 36, right? So that's in half. It doesn't matter if the lines are like weird like that. Most of the time I can't correct it because I drew it in pen. But this time I will. There we go. Slightly better. And we're going to do the same thing here. Usually when I'm working the graph like this and I mark it off, I'm going to work down. So I'm going to start here, I'm going to work down, and then I'm going to move over like this. So I know I have to decrease on the first row right here. So I'm going to put a tick right there. So that way I know when I'm doing this row, I have to, when I'm doing this row, I have to decrease. And I'm just going to put a tick on the bottom of these. Because when I reach those rows, I'm also going to have to decrease. And that's the first part. Then it wants me to work even for 8 rows. So I'm just going to make this a separate graph. Because, like a separate graph box. Because I know I'm doing something different. It's the next step. So that way, like, the way the book explains it, they actually put a space because it's a different step. So because it's a different step, I'm going to draw a new square. So for this, it wants me to work even for 8 rows. So sweet. Just 4 by 2. Usually they end up being like similar sizes, the squares, because I'm drawing it on lined paper. So at least half of the squares are all the same size. And then it wants me to increase 1 stitch at the end of the next row, every following 7th, 5 more times. Okay. So again, I just have the odd stitch here. Oh. You know, I brought out a set of gloves so I wouldn't have to erase with my hands, but then I did it anyway. Yeah. Well, that wiped off pretty well, though. Alright. So we're just going to have that 1 stitch right there. And then every following 7th row. 5 more times. So even though it's literally like 1 stitch off, like 1 row off, like this is going to be 36 and this is going to be 35, I'm going to draw a different sort of graph so that way the instructions follow in my head. So we're going to do 7 down this way. If we're just following 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. Yeah. So in this case, because it's a different graph, I can still use the tick marks to explain that I'm increasing. So I know I'm going to increase here. I'm going to increase here, because I know I have to increase at the end of those rows. Now, this is decrease and this is increase. And I'm going to know that because I'm going to keep on referring to the book, so I don't necessarily have to write it down. But if I'm afraid that I'm going to forget, I can always just write like the knitting abbreviations. So I could just write decrease on the top and increase there, and I'm good to go. And it wants me to work even until the piece measures 25 inches from the hem. So basically, that's not 25 inches from where I ended here. That's 25 inches from the very beginning. And then from here, it wants me to shape the armhole. So when it comes to shaping the armhole, I mean, if you look here, you can kind of see there's kind of like a flat bit. It's a little bit harder, but like the human body isn't like a piece of paper. There's actually like some space. So usually when you start an armhole, it's going to tell you to bind off more than 1. So it wants me to bind off 7 at this case at the next 2 rows. So when this happens, let's see here. Do I want to continue over there or do I want to go down here? We'll go down here. So when it comes to, if I'm going to decrease on a row that I know I have to decrease more than 1, I will usually write the number that I will have to decrease because I automatically assume this tick is like, oh yeah, it's just 1 stitch. All good. So in this case, I'm going to have to bind off 7. So we're just going to do this. Get like the 2. And then I'll put 7 on top. So that way I know I'm taking off 7. And it wants me to decrease 1 stitch at every right side, at each end of every right side row. 2 times. Now, because I haven't worked through the pattern yet, I'm going to make the assumption that when it tells me to bind off for the first time, the right side is going to be facing me. Whether that's actually the case or not, I don't know. But it wants me to do it 1 time. So in this case, this is just going to be like a 3 stitch. Going to be another decrease. And usually, like, when it's like this, the pattern will say decrease at each end, so I don't necessarily have to verify which end I'm working with, you know? Like, I know, oh yeah, it's just the same on each end. But what's coming up is divide for neck and continue with armhole shaping. Now, as you can imagine, like, the neck and the arm don't make the same type of holes. So with this one, work 27, in this case, it's going to be work 39 stitches with the second ball of yarn, bind off center 5 stitches, work remaining. And it's working each side separately, right? So in this case, we have 2 different instructions that we're following at the same time. And this is when the graph really comes in handy. So work each side separately, decrease armhole edges every right side row 9 times more. So that's going to be at least 28. Then shape neck. All right. So in this case, I'm going to draw I'm going to draw a 27 stitch thing because I have to do it 9 times. It looks like, well, we'll find out. My math on this part could be a little bit wrong, but I'll still be able to make my point. Can you still see that? Yeah, good. All right. So this will have at least enough to keep on going. So crease 1 at armhole edges every right side row 9 times. So basically, it's going to come after 2 more rows, yeah? This is going to be the one where I bind off, and then this one is going to be the one where I just work as normal. So with this one, when I start, it's going to start with a right side row. I do it 9 times. So for the armhole, because I've been using the tick here, I'm going to keep on using the tick. I do it 9 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now the way I know this is going to stay in order is because remember I told you guys earlier, like, it's not going to be the case for these guys. But with these guys, I work down. So when I work down here, I'm going to hit them in order. I'm going to start here, I'm going to work my way down. And then when it comes to shaping the neck, it'll tell me how many, yeah. Oh, then shape neck. Okay. So in this case, you stop, with this pattern, you stop the armhole shaping the moment you start on the neck. So it looks like you do the decreases on the neck on the wrong side. Here. So when you are following 2 separate patterns at the same time, I have a different mark that I use to signify I'm doing my decrease here, but not here. So when I see this, I'm doing this for the armhole. I'm not doing this for the neck. But when it comes time to the neck, I do this type of squiggle instead. So I do it at the edge of the next row. You can see I did that sort of squiggle there, kind of like a zigzag. I do it every other row for 10 times. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, I'm going to have to keep on going. then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then every fourth row, for the pattern I'm following, it wants it 2 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in this case, it wants me to continue working even, so I don't need these stitches right here. That's the end of that. So here I keep track. When I'm working here, I'm working the neck edge. When I'm working here, I'm working, like when I'm working with this, I'm working with the armhole edge. And then it wants me to shape the shoulder. So because this is a separate section again, I make a different graph. Well, at this point, because it's literally only 3 rows, I don't really even need to make a graph because I can keep track of that. So this is my diagram for the back. This is what it's going to take in order for me to make the back of the sweater. Then the next part will be like the right front and the buttonhole band and the left front. So the other thing that's important about the graph is how do I mark it off that I've done a row. So when I've done a row, usually I just do a single slash just like that. And then when I'm done, I'll just keep on doing slashes like that. Once I finish the row, I do the slash. Which, when it comes to parts like the armhole band, or not the armhole band, like here when I'm decreasing the armhole in the neck, I'm going to have to do that twice because it splits in half. I don't have to draw the graph twice again. I can use this for both. What I can do is I can just do 1 slash when I've done one side, and then when I finished, like with the one side, if I'm using this to go to the other side, I just draw an X. Just like that. And then that's how I know that I've done it for the other one. Now say I've made a big mistake and I did it in pen so I can't erase it. I can also just shade it in too. But I prefer using slashes if I know that I'm going to be using it for multiple patterns, because then it increases the amount of time that I can use for each graph. Like each graph without having to like redraw it all over again, you know? And without just having like things like this, I can also just, boom, have a straight X like that. And that is the graphing system that I'm going to be using to make the sweater. I mean, to me it seems pretty simple. It's a way for me to make my mind like make sense of it, but I know it seems off-putting to a lot of people. Yeah, so I guess now the next thing is to actually start the sweater. Alright, so this is how the chart has turned out when I drew it over. Now I realized when I did the demonstration on the ceiling, I accidentally drew 10 rows in the middle here when I said there were actually 8, so I corrected it here. But I counted how many rows I was going to do straight, so 52 rows straight. So I wrote that down so that way when I continue the vest, I know for the front I just have to count 52 rows and I'm good. So I included these little lumps here so that way I know exactly when I need to do the that special row in the pattern, because I realized in the pattern the special row that made it different from the rest only happened once every 4 rows. So if I just counted out that row, I could do it at the same time as I was doing increases, and I didn't have to keep a counter going on for those parts. This part I started losing track on a little bit, where the extra row was. But then I realized there's something a little bit different going on here, in that I actually didn't need to separate the armhole side versus the neck side here. I'm going to change the angle a little bit to show you what's going on. So if you look here in the book, you can see that for the back, it kind of decreases on the armhole side, but then it's pretty much straight going all the way up. But the way I had interpreted it, it was like the armhole side, and then you do the decreases on the neck side a little bit. Anyway, with the way that I have it here, I don't know if you can see it. Oh yeah. It was not going to be like the same. It was having me like decrease here at first on this side instead of decreasing here. And so this part just would have been going straight up, and then this part would have been like going that way. Anyway, I have to look at it a little bit more. I think I have to take out a couple rows just so I'm back to decreasing on the side that I'm supposed to decrease. But the rest of it's been turning out pretty good. I mean, this is what I got so far. And I got like the increase, like this is where it's kind of flat, and then it goes in, and then it comes back out a little bit before I decrease for the armhole row. Not that bad, a bit heavy. But that's to be expected. Anyway, I'm going to continue on with this. So I'm going to like check to make sure that my pattern is what it's supposed to be, and then we'll take it from there. Here is the finished vest. Very nice, right? Just flip it over to the other side. I decided against the trim because I got lazy, but it still looks nice without it. And I didn't have to go to the yarn store in order to get any more yarn. I hope that proved informative for you. And that was today's entertainment. Have a nice day.